Coming up on this episode of Inside the Skev, we speak with Erlene Howard and Mary Beth Schaye from Collective Resource Compost. We learn about composting, their business model, and how they have created a success that really supports the Skokie and Evanston communities. This podcast is an exploration of the stories and life of the people and places of Skokie and Evanston, Illinois, a community rich in history, culture, and diversity. As the host of this show, I aim to better connect and promote our towns, and really shine the light on why this is such a great place to live. As a local realtor with Dreamtown Realty, I can help you become part of this community too. Welcome to Inside the Skev, and I'm your host, Aaron Masliansky. Today, I am delighted to be joined with Erlene Howard and Mary Beth Schaye from Collective Resource Compost. Collective Resource Compost is a women-owned business that composts food scraps and has a pickup service based in Evanston. They collect all the food waste and compostable products from homes, businesses, and institutions and take them to a commercial composting site. The food scraps then become a nutrient-rich soil instead of sitting in a landfill. Commercial composting is different from backyard composting because anything that was once alive, including meat and dairy products, can be composted. In addition to hauling compost, they educate the public about the importance of reducing landfill use. On top of that, they have municipal franchise agreements for Skokie and Evanston, so they are definitely inside the Skev here. Thank you both for coming on, and so great to see you today.
So nice to be here, Aaron. Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome. And, I think that this episode is kind of a microcosm of what we've been going through the pandemic, because we were scheduled to actually do this show right when the lockdown started. And we postponed it, and, things come up in life and whatnot. And we're finally here. And I'm so grateful that we are here today to have this discussion, because what you guys do is so great. And I'm sure your business has been affected by this, like everybody's, and we want to talk about it and learn more about it. One of the first things is that people ask, though, is what is composting? Because you think, okay, everything's going to the garbage and everything. Like, what actually is it?
Okay, so that's my question.
Okay, go for it, Mary Beth.
So composting is when organic materials are given the opportunity to biodegrade in an oxygen-rich environment. So what we do is food scrap hauling, but what everyone calls it is composting, including us. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess so. You're basically taking all the food scraps and everything. So even like paper would be something that you can compost, or banana peels, or all different types of things like that, right?
Right. We have a long list.
A very long list. I want to jump in just a little bit that we're trying to let Mother Nature do what would happen naturally if there wasn't so many people trying to get rid of their waste. So we're just recreating what would happen if we were not in the middle of it. Paper, if it's clean, should go into the recycling bin. It should not be in the compost, but if it's got food on it, like a paper towel or a napkin or anything that you've used in food service that's 100% paper, can go into the compost pile.
There's one funny exception.
What is that?
One of the people who works for us, she takes her checks and she, digitally deposits them, and then she tears them up and puts them in the compost, which I think is brilliant.
That is.
It's clean paper, but you don't want to recycle that.
Right.
No, you don't really want to recycle that. I don't think you want that running through again. But basically what you're trying to recreate is anaerobic respiration, which is what all animals do when they eat and they digest food, right?
Exactly.
Now that we're talking about this, I'm thinking about like the history of garbage. Why did we ever start to think that it just made sense to put everything in a dump or a landfill and not just try to separate this and put it into our fields right away? Where did this mindset come to just throw away the waste and it's no good any longer?
Yeah, so I'll jump in here. So I think that it's just the disconnect in the industrial age that happened when we got removed from how our food is grown or growing our own food. And if you were growing your own food, you would understand that part of it was, the stalks or whatever were being left in the garden and was becoming part of the rich soil that you would be growing your food in again in the following summer. So I think it's just a disconnect. I think that as the industry of landfilling grew, it became very popular to want the food scraps because the food scraps are the heaviest part of the food waste. And if you were being paid by the ton for the material that you were receiving, you would want to have all the food scraps. I think landfills are part of ancient societies had their piles of broken pottery or things that, they didn't no longer want that people can find when there's a history to this. But we got disconnected with what goes in there, along with disconnected with what we were making, this whole stuff, the story of stuff and the story of plastic and all of that. So in that increase of things to throw away, it became very popular to have this idea that you could throw it away.
It's almost like we're incentivized to do something that harms us in a way. And it's almost like the development of the urban environment where we try to separate out our agricultural or animal selves from this idea that humans are completely different and we have no connection to the land. So when you look at what you're doing, you're not just composting and helping to remove things from the landfill. You're actually trying to get us back to our roots as human beings in a way. So is that why you started this company? What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah. So I started Collective Resource because I feel incredibly blessed. I've been able to eat very healthy for all of my life. I've been able to make decisions to have very healthy food. And I was realizing I was producing this trash, what I would call trash then, that was all these organic vegetable peels and cores and all the things that I wasn't going to eat were going into the trash. And it didn't really make sense. I got introduced to yard composting. I couldn't do it in my yard, but I started to learn more and more about the composting. Everything that I read made me like, I need to figure this out. And so this light bulb went off for me that said, if composting were easy, more people would do it. And I just went on this mission of starting to tell everybody that I was starting a composting service. And it took not very long. The light bulb went off for me in the fall of 2009. And by May of 2010, I had connected the dots of where the food scraps were going to go once I collected them. And then by the middle of June of 2010, did my first collection. Mary Beth came along from a different angle, but very similar values.
We feel really lucky to be able to do work that aligns with our values. So I came about doing this work because I volunteered to be one of the chairs of the Green Committee at my daughter's elementary school. And at the beginning of the year, we weren't really sure what we wanted to accomplish, but the first opportunity was a pancake breakfast that was a fundraiser. And in a PTA meeting beforehand, someone talked about compostable products. And I thought, where are we going to compost 200 plus plates, leftover pancakes, syrup?
Do you want to put it in your backyard?
I didn't even have, that's such a great question, because I didn't even have a compost bin in my backyard at the time. So what I did was I called Evanston Ecology Center because I live in Evanston. If I lived in Skokie, I would call Emily Oakes. And I said, what should I do? And Beth at the Ecology Center said, well, there's this woman who just started this composting business. She's going to be one of the exhibitors and at the Green Living Festival that's coming up on the same date as our pancake breakfast. We thought that was interesting timing. Why don't you call her? I called Erlene, and she told me what this easy process was going to be. She told me where to buy compostable products. I bought them all online, one order. She gave me receptacles. At the time, we were only using 5-gallon, or she was only using 5-gallon buckets. We didn't even have 32-gallon totes yet for zero waste events that we use now. And we ended up filling, I think, 7. We packed them very tightly because you pay by the bucket. And we ended up having, I think, 7 buckets of waste, compostable waste, and only like a t-shirt bag of other waste. The custodians could not believe it.
I bet.
The custodians love us. We come and they're like, oh, my job is going to be easier. This was so easy that I thought, I want to teach everybody how to do this. This is incredible. And so I have been.
Did you both create companies beforehand, or was this your first experience being entrepreneurial
I
and
have
starting a
some
company?
experience. So when my son Kevin was born, I decided I wasn't going to go back into corporate America. I did a lot of financial management for other businesses, and I started a little company called Howard Office Support. It evolved along the way. I started a bookkeeping service a little bit later down my career called Bottom Line Management, again, very focused on financial management. And that was a bookkeeping service that I had about 25 clients and 4 other bookkeepers working with me. And so I was, in the throes of managing a lot of people's businesses, especially on the financial end. And so I had a lot of experience running a small company by the time the mission, the idea to start a composting service popped into my head.
I want to take a moment to tell everybody about a new opportunity here at Inside the Skev. Always looking to add value to the community. And one of the things that I have now introduced is in-show sponsorships. So if you're looking to have a little commercial during the show, that is available. You could reach a really loyal, hyper-local Skokie and Evanston based community. So if you have a business or organization that really wants to reach people here, it's a wonderful opportunity at some affordable prices. Just reach out to me at aaron@skevinston.com. One of the themes that I've seen from people when I interview them and they're entrepreneurs is that when the business is successful is when the people involved are passionate about what they're doing. I recently interviewed Ross Gordon, who owns a bass and tackle fishing company, and he was in a different business before and he loved fishing, and then he realized that there was a need for it, and it's an outstanding business. And here you guys have this composting business, which people didn't even really know what composting was or would just throw it in their backyard. And now you have franchise agreements with Skokie and Evanston, and you do a lot of work throughout the city. It's become very successful. How did you scale it?
Early on, I started to sign my emails one bucket at a time. Yeah, saving the planet, one bucket at a time.
Saving the
And
planet.
still, I realized that pretty much my saving the planet part was one email at a time. First, there was one employee, my son, and Mary Beth was floating around as a consultant and setting up zero waste events and talking to people about zero waste events and hiring collective resource. And didn't take very long till she was like, okay, I'm ready to be on the inside, which was great. It was perfect. Early adopters, there were plenty of people who looked at me like I was a crazy alien from another planet. They had no idea what I was talking about. Really intelligent people. An electrical engineer was like, what? Food becomes dirt? I was like, I was picking up by myself on Wednesday afternoons, and then it turned into 3 days a week. And, 6 months in, my son joined in. We had days that he was using our car. We were using our car to collect compost buckets in. On the 2 days that he wasn't driving around picking up buckets, I was off to bookkeeping customers. I was still doing bookkeeping. We just had this juggling thing that we did until we got big enough that we bought our first truck, which really didn't take that long. It was about 10 months in, we bought a truck, and then we bought the larger containers and started to work with restaurants. And so it is scalable.
I was even doing some hauling in my minivan.
I'm sure that smelled great.
So one of our first schools that was not in Evanston was Hubbard Woods School in Winnetka. They were really concerned with the compost staying at the school over the weekend. They would collect all week, and they were really concerned about that. So I would go on Friday afternoons, pick up their compost, and then go pick up my own daughter from school.
I'm sure she was thrilled.
I would usually get rid of I missed a step. I would
Oh,
drop the
okay.
compost off someplace else. Although she has done zero waste events with me, but not in the minivan, in my Prius, which has been nicknamed the zero waste clown car. It's amazing what you can get in there.
Yeah, Priuses can definitely fit a lot. I've had a couple in my history. How many trucks though do you have now, and how many employees?
So we have 23 employees, and we have 8 trucks that we run, 7 Sprinter cargo vans, and then a big box truck. We they do have cute.
They all have really cute names.
What are some of the names?
You're putting me on the spot, but it's it's Humus, Terra, Nitro, Sage, Gaia, Nightcrawler, Scout, Eden.
Those are some good names.
They're about the environment or about the soil.
That's
We had a
awesome.
truck, Flora, who retired. She's now in RV that gets to travel around the country. I know her owner, and she got completely revamped. But every other truck that we've bought is still in service, which is fantastic.
One of the things that I was curious about when I first met you guys and I went out to your facility in Skokie was, let's say I signed up as a customer, like how does it actually work? And I've seen some of my friends have the compost bins, and like, would I want to do that? Like, does it make sense? Like you actually, you have to pay more because if garbage is part of my taxes, why would I want to do it? But I decided to sign up because I think for all the reasons we talk about here, helping the environment, connecting back with our roots in the land, reducing waste, I think are all very valid things that people need to think about. And I think that there's a cost, even if you're not paying an additional cost, like you're paying a cost by throwing it in the garbage, by using up more land, water, resources, all those types of things. But I've been thrilled with how the service works because I put everything, I have a little bucket inside my house. We put all the food scraps in there. We have so much less garbage. It's insane. I mean, I could actually use a couple of recycling day pickups and one garbage day pickup. The compost, I put it in this big orange bucket, you come pick it up, and it's so easy. It's a very, very good service. I was like trying to figure out like how much waste did I remove, and you guys actually gave me the statistics, right?
Yeah.
so I've had 29 pickups since we met, right? And 145 gallons of compost that hasn't.
I'm picturing your family on your driveway with 29 5-gallon buckets.
Right.
How about we do that picture?
We should do a picture like that. We absolutely should.
And that's only been 7 months. So I did a slide once. I was doing a climate reality leader slideshow, and I created a slide that had all of the buckets that my family had produced. Just like you had 29, we had been doing it for something like 8 years. So it was like over 600.
Wow.
I know. Isn't that
That's
crazy?
an impact. That's a huge impact. And I know a lot of people say, well, if I just do this, it's not really going to help. It's really nothing. No, it's something. It's a lot. It's a lot. We produce a lot of waste.
And we also find that people, once they start separating out their food scraps, they're looking at the rest of their garbage and they want to figure out ways to make that even less.
Right.
In a lot of cases, that means looking at your single-use plastic and trying to figure out ways to reduce that.
Right, because the plastic doesn't really break down. And when it breaks down, it doesn't disintegrate into soil. It's just smaller pieces of plastic that get into our water supply and our bloodstreams and everything else.
Right, and there are a lot of good ways to reduce plastic too. Education has always been important to us, mostly because nobody knew what we were talking about at the beginning, so we had to educate. We feel like we like to build community through sustainability. And one of the ways that we do that is that we have a blog that is on our website every month, that I write every month.
What's the website, by the way?
The website is www.collectiveresource.us. So we have a new blog every month that talks about all different sustainability practices, and so there might be some stuff there that your listeners want to hear about.
Absolutely. I think that the listeners of this show are people who do care a lot about the environment. I think have similar causes throughout the area and, maybe throughout the world, I would hope are listening, but certainly in Skokie and Evanston. And I think that we're a community that does care about the environment and many issues of fairness and just trying to improve the world, really. Somebody may ask, well, why should I use your service as opposed to just doing the backyard? A lot of people have gardens, they could use it, but there's also people who live in a condo building or something where maybe it's not possible. But even if you have a house, what is the benefit of using your service over personal?
So I'll jump in here. It's a hobby if you want to compost in your yard. It's something that you're going to need to take care of and do. It's a little bit like backwards gardening, but you do have to tend to it. You have to manage it. You have to contain it so that you make sure that you don't have a rodent issue with it. And it's limited about the amount and types of food that you can put into it. You can only do your fruits and vegetables, and depending on what you want to use the finished product for, you really want to pay attention to what you're putting into it. I have a very avid gardener who's a friend who, if she doesn't buy an organic banana, she won't even put her banana peel in there because of the amount of pesticides that are on the banana peel. She doesn't want that to be included in her garden. So obviously she's trying to buy organic all the time because she's using the soil. But she even hired us because there are things that she can't put into her backyard compost, like the bones, fish skins, the food soiled paper products. If she has too much citrus, she doesn't want to put all of that into her mix. She's really curing a compost for gardening. And then when the winter comes, whether you're doing it yourself in your yard, you might not want to be trudging through the snow to your compost pile that's not breaking down because it's frozen. Or if you're using a yard cart in Evanston, that season ends. And so then we have a winter gap program to pick up while the yard carts aren't being picked up. And then people get used to us and the buckets on, wherever they want us to pick it up from, it's right by their back door and they're getting a fresh bucket every time. And it's a lot easier. And so it's really about what your end goal is, what you want to do with the material and how much time you have. And then does your yard even lend itself to having a compost pile? So there's a lot to consider.
What is the actual process of from pickup at my house to becoming compost? Like, what are the steps of where you take it and what is the compost actually used for?
So let's start at the beginning. So you go to our website and you sign up that you want compost service and you give us a little bit of information about yourself, or you ask us a question if you're not quite ready. And then we will give you the information of when your pickup day is. And you can choose if you want us to come weekly or every other week. And then we deliver a bucket and you put your food scraps in it. We come back on your pickup day. Like you already said, we send you a reminder ahead of time. If you're not keeping your bucket outside, which you're more than welcome to do, we have customers leave their buckets in all different places, but some people choose to bring them inside and then put them out on pickup day. Either way, we like to let them know we're coming. The morning starts at our garage with our drivers reviewing their routes and collecting up the containers that they need to have to complete their route. And they drop off a fresh container for you and pick up your full one. And then they go to the compost site and they empty each container there. And we look in each bucket. Residential composting has very little contamination in it, but we do look at each bucket to see if someone made a mistake. We had a ongoing customer once that all of a sudden her bucket had a lot of contamination in it. And we're like, what's going on? And she said, oh, my kid's home from school and he doesn't know the rules about what goes in the bucket.
What was he putting in there?
Everything, like recycling, and it was he did not get the concept of what the orange bucket was about.
Contamination is a word that we use in waste hauling. It just means the wrong thing in the bucket. I mean, you can have contamination in recycling also, if you have the wrong things in the recycling bin.
So then, though, when it gets to the site, it's going to a larger facility, right?
It's going to a very large facility called Harborview. It's in the southeast corner of Chicago in Calumet Harbor at 122nd and Stony Island, on top of a capped landfill. They've been repurposing this land for a long time there. It was a yard waste only facility for many years. And then in January of 2010, when State Bill 99 passed and it became legal to separate the food scraps from the landfill, then they upgraded their permit to be able to receive food scraps. In the early days, we drove all the way to the compost site ourselves. Now we take advantage of a transfer station where our material gets combined with other food scraps and yard waste and gets taken down. So we're only going to 31st in California, which is kind of the tail end of many of our routes. At Harborview, though, they take the material and they grind it up with the yard waste and the leaves and the branches, and they lay it out in windrows. And windrows are exactly what they sound like. They're great big rows of ground up organic material.
I always say that they look like a Toblerone, like a Toblerone candy bar.
Yeah. They do.
Except really big, a really big one. Bigger than the one you can get at the airport.
So they are 18 feet wide and 9 feet tall or 8 feet tall. They are big. And I just was amazed the first time I rolled in on a winter's day and saw this strip of land steaming. The land itself was steaming. And then right next to it was this long row of material that was completely steaming because they had just turned it. And so the land that it had been sitting on this 20-degree day had been cooking, in the heat coming up from it. And then next to it was this freshly turned material that, obviously had to cool down and get its outer crust so the inside could keep cooking.
From the bacteria?
No, it's the nitrogen and carbon reaction.
Oh, okay.
That causes it to cook. It doesn't freak me out. So I'm in the right business.
We did a road trip to Denver and we took our orange bucket with us.
That's cool.
And we did some fast food, I have to say. So we were getting paper bags. And we realized that if we put our compost in these paper bags, even though we didn't have a countertop container to use, we were putting the yuckier compost, like, the food, in paper bags. Our bucket didn't get dirty at all, because we were stacking paper plates and stuff on the bottom. And then we had these like brown paper bags that had the wet stuff in it. And it worked perfectly. So I was kind of a hard sell. So we suggest that people use a countertop container.
Yes, that's what I use.
Erlene would always talk about lining hers with paper bags. And for years, I used the bio bag things. And I don't know, there's something happened that I was like, okay, I'll try it. And it's so much nicer. What's great about it, Erin, is that because it's paper, I tend to take it out of the countertop one and put it in the bucket more frequently.
Yeah.
And so it's just a nicer experience.
I do use the compost bags. I've gotten them and they fit pretty nicely in the countertop container. But yeah, the paper would work pretty well too. I agree. I mean, these are all like great pro tips, you guys.
Yeah. That's so funny. We call them pro tips.
Really? Yeah, they definitely are. I mean, if anyone who should know about composting, it's the two of you for sure.
Mary Beth told me a great story when she started with the service and was really paying attention to what was ending up in the compost bucket at the end of the week when she was cleaning out her refrigerator. And she realized that her family wasn't eating as much of the rotisserie chicken as she thought they were. And, the fact that there was so much of it going into the orange bucket, she was like, I don't really need to buy this chicken every week or every other week.
Also, it came in a big plastic container that was difficult to clean off. And it was just like, okay, I'm done.
And that decision to change her shopping habits, and many people have told me different stories in different ways of how once you see what you're throwing away changes what you're buying, then people generally are saving the money of the compost service by paying attention to what they're throwing away and being better shoppers.
Right. So in the end of the day, you're saving money too, potentially. And also the compost itself, it goes towards beautifying our landscapes, right?
Oh, it does. Thanks. You had asked that already. I didn't get back to that. But
No problem.
the Harborview site has done a lot of really lovely projects over the years. One great big project, if you've lived in Chicagoland for a long time, is when the museum campus got rebuilt and they fixed Lakeshore Drive down in the south end there. All of that land got filled in with material from Harborview. It was just a yard waste site at that point, but they hauled in all of this fresh material to fill in there. And then the Illinois Department of Transportation, when they do road work projects, they take this material from Harborview and similar sites, and they work into, doing the landscaping at the end of the projects. And Scott's Lawn Care buys a fair amount of the material to mix in with their seeds and fertilizers. And a seed planted with compost has an 80% higher germination rate than a seed that's planted on its own. So we're excited that that happens.
One thing I want to emphasize to people is that this is a good opportunity to take advantage of it because many of us are home. We're home a lot more than we used to be. I can imagine it has an effect on your business because I know you do a lot of commercial work with schools and things like that. And, with them not being open, there's a slowdown on that end. For home and you're eating all your meals at home and you have more waste, really people should consider composting at home right now to kind of make up that difference, but also just to be more cognizant of it because the waste that you have is taking place more at your residence.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty scary at the second half of March and all the schools closed. We were servicing 50 schools at that point, and then we had another 160 commercial accounts close very rapidly. And that was really quite a shock to our system. I never thought that I was going to be looking for storage space for empty compost totes. We have a whole storage field now of 32-gallon totes waiting for businesses, restaurants, and schools to get on the other side of COVID.
So would this be a good time to talk about neighbor totes?
Yes. What are neighbor totes?
Well, so this is something that we were working on before the pandemic struck. So we've been talking about these 32-gallon totes. So what they are, they're garbage cans. They're green. They have wheels on them. They're really easy to move around. We line them with a liner. So that's something that can be tied up within it and keeps it even cleaner. So this is something that you can use to compost communally. They're being used obviously at bigger companies and stuff, but they're also being used in multi-unit dwellings. So everyone is composting communally. They have their countertop containers and then they just put their compost into the neighbor tote. One of our ideas was that this is something that could be great for faith communities. Of course, faith communities are not meeting in person like they were.
Or having meals. Yeah.
Even for not necessarily having meals together, but that particularly people who live alone find our model of like a 5-gallon bucket a little tricky because it takes a while if you live alone to fill it.
Sure.
But if you were doing it communally, then you could bring your compost to your faith community if you're going there anyway. So we just wanted to get that idea into people's heads. And it's actually less expensive per gallon than the 5-gallon buckets. One of the things that Erlene and I figured out really early on was to say yes and then to figure out how to do anything. And that's worked really well for us. So we're like, just ask us and we'll see if we can make it happen. And most likely we can.
So if people have ideas, they should reach out to you.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I guess there's two things I want to say. I had 4 customers in 2 different buildings right next to each other. So 3 flats right next to each other. And it turned out that there were 4 customers. And we suggested to them, why don't you all just share this 32-gallon tote? And they love it. They love that it's cheaper. They love that they're not figuring out, each container and everybody remembering to get their bucket outside, so that the tote is in a place where we can trade it out. In that situation, it costs them about $1 per person per week to
Wow,
do
that's not
their,
bad.
yeah.
Right. It's
It's a
great.
great model to get people going.
My boyfriend lives in a co-op building, and there are 3 towers of 8, like a little courtyard building. And we have a tote in each of the towers. It's in the basement, like on the way to the laundry room. It's like the perfect solution. It's not that far to get it outside for pickup. And, everybody's going out. It works really well.
I really hope that one day we kind of reconfigure the sizes of everything of what we do for how we deal with our waste. So maybe our compost being these totes, and then our recycling being larger and our garbage being small. That would really say something in many ways if that's possible to do. And I think it is. You have a franchise agreement with Skokie and Evanston. So does that mean that you're the official composter, or how does that work?
We went through a process of writing out a proposal about how we would provide service to the community. And in exchange for having an exclusive agreement, meaning that there would be not another compost service in town with a container swap model, we created a franchise pricing. And the idea was to make it within reach for the Skokie and Evanston residents. In exchange for that, both of the cities, villages, talk about the program and get people involved. And we started in Evanston in November of 2017 and have expanded to 4 times the amount of people that we serve in Evanston. And then Skokie just came on in January of 2020. Their numbers are growing. It really helps when the message is coming from outside of us. It's always been a challenge when we're explaining that this is really important work, and by the way, you need to pay us. It makes people skeptical about if it's really as important as we know it is. When NECA decided to go in a little bit different, they decided to have vendors that they would promote through their village website, and we are one of them. And even that, just that shout out of it being there and them talking about composting has created a lot more people composting.
We've come a long way in 10 years from, where you're talking about how the waste facilities couldn't even accept food scraps to be separated out, to now having municipalities basically sanctioning these services, basically endorsing them, I should say. I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful opportunity to improve our environments. Can people sign up at any time?
Anytime. And then we also have discounts for paying quarterly or paying annually. You can start any of those at the beginning of any month. It's not tied to the calendar year or the calendar quarter or whatever. And so often people start by paying for a month or paying for a couple of pickups or whatever, but they often switch into taking advantage of the reduction in price by paying for more service ahead of time. The other thing is we have a service map, and you can put your zip code into the service map if you're not right here in the neighborhood. For people who are out a little bit farther, because we go all the way up to Lake Bluff and out to Schaumburg and down to Addison, we have a wide reach, but we're not in every single neighborhood. But you can plug your zip code in to the service map, and it will tell you that you're in our pickup area. If you're not in our pickup area, we would really like you to tell us that you're interested in us coming to your neighborhood. And once we get a certain amount of interest in any particular area, then we take a leap and we expand where we pick up from.
What do you really want to leave the listener with? What is some of your final thoughts?
Well, we didn't really talk that much about why compost. So I think people are very familiar with carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas, that our cars generate that. But when food scraps go to landfills, they create methane, which is an even more powerful greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And so by diverting your food scraps through commercial composting, using a service like ours, you can help mitigate climate change. And it's easy. Ask Erin.
It is very easy. Well, it's been a pleasure to have you both on the show. I really hope that people learned a lot and enjoyed this episode. And certainly, please take advantage of this service. We're lucky to have you guys here because you're helping our environment. You're helping us think about making the world a better place. And in general, just making it more positive, especially in a challenging time. So appreciate you both coming on and your patience and in terms of the timing of when we've been on. And I'm so grateful that we've had this opportunity to speak.
Erin, thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of Inside the Skev. Don't forget to subscribe so you always catch the next episode. Share it with your friends, share it on social media, and enjoy.